Good morning. Today is Sunday, September 4th. Let's set our intention, make aspirations by saying the Four Immeasurables prayer. May all beings have happiness in the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering in the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. So today we will we'll meditate, and then Victoria's going to talk about the four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma, which is a very fundamental, foundational practice in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And it's four thoughts and concepts that really inspire you towards practice and reiterate the facts of why you need to practice. And she's going to go in detail, but basically it's one, the fact that you have these causes and conditions that allow you to access teachings and hear teachings and have the ability to practice teachings is a rare and fortuitous circumstance that not everybody gets it, Not everyone gets that. And the second is that everything is impermanent. The third is that karma is infallible. And the fourth is that samsara is, suffering is pervasive in samsara. So these things, she's going to go into detail on how meditating on these four thoughts can really inspire you and create a urgency to study and meditate and practice, So we'll get to that after we sit, and then there's Q&A. So if you have questions about the meditation or about Victoria's talk, you can write them using the Q&A function, and we'll get to them at the end of class. But let's start meditation, and let's start with the 9 purifying breaths. We start with the Vajra fist. His thumb presses to the base of the ring finger and then closes. You do this with both hands. We take the right finger, we go to the left nostril, and the bottom, the left hand goes to the bottom of the elbow. There's actually a pressure point that closes the channel, and it's important to have that support. So we'll breathe in and breathe out. And we're envisioning the 3 channels. The blue is in the center. In men, the white is on the right, and the red is on the left. In women, it's reversed. The channels go from the nostrils up the head, down the back. The 3 channels meet right below the navel. So imagine the breath going into the right channel, and you're breathing out that stale kind of not pure energy. Air, same thing. Wind. Switch left hand to the right side, breathing into the left channel. Breathing out. Keeping the Vajra fist in both hands, you can put those on your knees and breathe through both nostrils into the central blue channel. Hold and breathe out. On the last breath, we imagine breathing out and it escaping through the crown chakra, merging our consciousness with space, and we take that right into meditation. If you're new, just do your best you can. We don't do a review every class. You can go to the first 2 classes of 2022 on our website, YouTube channel. But sit comfortably, either cross-legged, half lotus, whatever you're comfortable in. It helps if your hips are above your knees. Keep your back straight, but not rigid. Tibetan tradition, we use our eyes open. And sometimes you can close your eyes just to kind of, almost like checking in or taking a step back and then reopen them. Relaxed gaze, whatever you're looking on, relax. Not intensely staring, not spaced out, not unfocused. Focus on the breath. We're breathing through our nose, if we can, focusing on the place where the breath goes in and out, where the nostrils meet the upper lip. And just focus on that movement. Place your attention there. Use your awareness to look at your mind. Use your awareness to become aware of what you're thinking about, and the fact that you are thinking. Just recognize that you are thinking. Don't follow the thought. Don't reject the thought. We use the visualization of the mind being sky-like in nature, limitless, clear, infinite, calm, and a thought or an emotion rises like a cloud or a storm, and it dissolves back and does not leave a trace of itself, does not stain, does not alter, does not blemish that sky-like nature of mind. And that's all we're really doing. Having thoughts is not bad, it's not wrong, it doesn't mean we're not meditating properly, it's just what the mind does. And we're watching them come and go, those thoughts. And when they go, we can just settle back into that peaceful, calm, natural, great peace that's there. Baseline mind is clarity, calmness, openness, spaciousness. Sometimes we can get tension between our eyes. It's good to just let that go, let that tension drop. And in the jaw too, commonplace. Let that just go. And have a little confidence. You're not trying to meditate, you're not succeeding or failing. You are meditating. That's what we're doing. feeling tense, uncomfortable, and you need to shift, that's okay. You don't have to be just locked and, afraid to move at all. It's okay. Just settle back into it. Back to the breath is like a mantra we use. Back to the breath. When we get lost in thought, because we will, that's okay. The key is to just recognize it and let it go. Back to the breath. It's almost like the breath is aerating the mind, like when you have a stuffy room and you open the doors and windows to freshen it, make it feel more spacious again and less confined and, and closed up and stale. That's kind of what we're doing actually to the mind. Your breath should be like a relaxed breath, not a deep breath. Unless you need a deep breath, you can take one, and not a short breath, but really just a relaxed, even breath. Great. I wanted to see if there was anything I needed to relay to you. Oh, this is good. This is from Lama Surya Das, his Instagram. Lama Surya, Surya, Das, DAS, USA, his Instagram page. Lama Surya Das did a class with us over a year ago, I think. And he's wonderful. And he quoted Milarepa, who was a Tibetan saint, and said, "I study my mind, and therefore all appearances are my texts," which I find really beautiful. Okay, Victoria is going to take it from here.
Hi everyone. I would like to touch back upon the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Buddhist path, to the path. It is considered a practice that is even preliminary to the preliminary practices. It is a state of mind, it is a beginning of blossoming of understanding that begins to recognize what is this wheel of samsara, what is this life, and begins to think. It's the mind that begins to turn away from ordinary pursuits, which the mind begins to notice that are often vain pursuits, and the mind begins to desire to have greater depth and greater meaning. These four thoughts that turn the mind are almost like opening the door before we get to the ladder of what we call the Buddhist path. It is preliminary. It is really just the mindset which begins to look at the world in a very fresh way, beyond the assumptions under which we've lived for many, many years of our life, and begins to examine and begins to realize that we live in some kind of a fake composite, and it's really shoddy walls and shoddy doors cannot convince us that it is real. It is the mind, the four thoughts, the mind that holds the four thoughts begins to realize that there is something underneath this movie screen, that we need to get out of this movie theater and not be stuck in this version of what we think reality is. And we need to go see the sky outside, not just walk into another movie theater and watch another film, but we need to go out into the sky and experience things for ourselves. So the four thoughts, as Michael mentioned before, are suffering, samsara and suffering. So samsara is one, suffering is one, impermanence, and then the preciousness of human existence. So I would like to really focus today on the preciousness of human existence, because that is why we meet here every week, is because we are using the ladder, we're using the vehicle of our precious human existence. And that is based on the three other things, is that we understand that we create samsara and keep its wheels spinning infinitely if we do not step out of this movie theater of the ego mind. Samsara is based on karma. And karma is created by a mechanism of where the dualistic afflicted mind, the ego mind, the me, mine, mind, and the five cravings that are kind of the primary components of that dualistic mind create judgment. And karma is created by judging, discarding what we don't like, and desiring and craving what we want. And so this desiring and discarding is the very impetus of karma. Karma means just action. You know, karma is not when we simply, through our five senses, the five sensory minds and the six conceptual mind, when we experience a flower. Karma begins when we experience the flower and then we say, I hate this flower, that guy gave me the flower, this was my wedding flower and now I'm divorced, etc., etc. Is when we start to experience afflictive minds on top of sensory and mental experience. That's, you know, we've been talking about the eight consciousnesses, you know, consciousness, the afflicted consciousness, the consciousness number 7, the ego structure with the 5 afflictions around it. Karma is simple action by body, speech, and mind that is unaware that it is functioning out of the afflictive mental states. That is how we very easily kill. We step on things, we eat things, we have things killed to wear, all these kinds of things that our mind, our conceptual mind, our ego mind tells us, oh, it's okay, I need it. I need those shoes, you know, I need these things. And of course, some of them are necessities, and it's the karma of certain things to undergo these states of existence. But these transgressions that are so easy and so forgotten and not seen by our dualistic conceptual mind, our ego mind, are all pervasive. And that is why there is samsara, because karma is perpetuated by us all the time, and karma creates the wheel of samsara that turns infinitely and infinitely. Samsara is characterized by suffering. There is nothing in samsara but suffering. Actions of body, speech, and mind. Unnoticeably, our entire conversation, our entire action of our speech is slandering, enjoying speaking badly about others, calling things such as such, using harsh language to put down and control someone to get what we want. It is so pervasive and so invisible, it characterizes our whole existence. Negative actions of mind, craving, hating, being jealous. Of course, the ego mind, the imposter, would, would tell us, well, no, it's not because I'm jealous. It's that person whose fault it is. They're taking what is truly mine. Or they have more, but I should have more. So the imposter, the ego mind, the dualistic conceptual mind, that is not our nature. That is just a little piece, a little functionality that we have within the limitless nature of mind. That ego mind tells us, no, I should have more. That should be mine. My desire is justified. So if I take away a house from that guy who's foreclosing, it's fine because I needed more. I see a burning car with a person, but I say, I have to go because I have a lunch appointment. Somebody else is going to come by and rescue those people and take them out of the car. So, samsara, suffering, selfishness, all this, you know, and of course, impermanence. You know, we suffer impermanence tremendously. We're afraid of wrinkles. We're afraid of death. We're afraid that our good situation is going to come to an end. We're afraid that this pleasurable meal is going to end and I'm not going to get the same pleasurable meal the next time. That the person I love is going to not smile at me anymore or love me anymore. This is all impermanence. But impermanence is the condition of samsara. When we start to understand, and this is what I really want to touch upon today, when we start to understand the preciousness of human existence and we start to use it to meditate, we very quickly and without too much hardship, we can start to begin to distinguish the nature of mind, the basis of our awareness, our basic nature, basic mind, intrinsic nature of awareness, and this conglomerate, the dualistic ego mind. When we're meditating, the fluffy stuff, I want this, I gotta be here, I should be playing my computer, I gotta do this and this, you know, this is waiting for me, the pleasurable meal in the restaurant at the end of the day, da, da, da. We let all that fluff settle in meditation. Then we begin to experience the deeper profundity, the undercurrent, the basic nature of mind, our true basic nature. And that basic nature is stainless. It's preconceptual. It doesn't arise. It doesn't cease. It's not like these little impermanent things that come and go. It has nothing to do with judgment. It has nothing to do with affliction. And this basic nature that is often referred to as the seed, the bodhi seed, the seed of awakening. And when that seed, the bodhi seed, that all sentient beings of the six realms, including our human realm, when that seed blossoms, it becomes what is known as Buddhahood. When the flower opens to its complete state, it is Buddhahood. But even in the seed form, that basic nature is something that we feel and know all the time. And it is unmistakable because every time that we understand something, we get something. Every time there is a discovery, every time we act and transcend the ego and we act from goodness, that's the place which we act from. But even the tiniest of things that we didn't understand a minute ago, we're reading a book, we're trying to solve a math problem, but we can't get it. We have to close our eyes and suddenly we drop into our basic nature. And from that basic nature, in the darkness, in the emptiness, something is illuminated and we get it, the eureka moment. That's something arising from our basic nature to that surfacey warehouse of concepts and ideas, the dualistic conceptual mind. Dualistic conceptual mind, by the way, can very often stop experiencing and seeing things in a new way. It regurgitates its old ideas. It pulls from these kinds of shelves, the concepts. I don't need to experience the flower. I've seen it before. I don't need you to tell me who you are. I already know. I already know how this is. I know how this is going to play out. This cynical, difficult, dark mind, this dualistic mind with its kind of this the shared public space. Often this dualistic conceptual mind, the mind of ego, thinks it's so original, it's so great, it's so this. But in fact, dualistic mind, this conceptual mind, deals in the area of things that have already passed, that are already like not lit up any longer. They're not experienced. They're simply like vague memories. They're labels, frequently labels that somehow suit our very dark purposes. So, for example, when we're having an argument with someone, instead of the mind looking at itself and saying, "It isn't about the other person. It's about anger. This anger is coming from me. This is my energy. I own it." That mind, that charlatan, as I call it, it deludes us into thinking, no, it's out there. That person is bad. They're the seed of all this negativity. We forget that we're together in the dance with that person. And that if we maybe would consider withdrawing the component of negativity, maybe the whole situation on fire would simply stop. It's also the kind of mind that thinks that it's very original and knows everything. In fact, some people have more information, have more of this bigger library. They think that they are the epitome of our existence. They're scholars, they're these knowers, and often they're the most bitter and cynical people of all people that we meet. Their minds are very closed and they're incapable of allowing the space for someone else to come in and give their point of view, or just simply allow oneself a new experience, a fresh experience of seeing something old one more time, fresh from scratch. And that would be allowing our basic nature to arise to the surface. The dualistic mind, the ego mind, because it's such a survivalist limb, it's so dominant. But in many ways, if you really think about it and you examine it, which is the preciousness of human existence, is that we can sit down to meditate, we can sit down to examine, we can sit down to analyze. And when you sit down and the fluff slows down, you look at these behaviors from the basic nature of mind and say, well, I'm doing things that I did when I got candy when I was 3. I smiled in a certain way. I twirled in a certain way. I batted my eyelashes in a certain way. And I got what I wanted. And now I wear a fancy suit and a tie. And I get what I want. I get the position. I get the job. But in many ways, this kind of mindless, repetitive behavior, it changes just so insignificantly. But we are using the same mechanisms. And our desires, they just grow from like a little toy car to a big car, to a big house, to a big office. They just change scale, but they don't change essence. And so when we understand impermanence, that we don't have time for the scale to get bigger and bigger and bigger, because when we die, we go empty-handed. When we understand suffering, that every time we want bigger and bigger and bigger, we have to knock people to the side. We have to do a lot of different things that causes a lot of friction. And then, of course, if we understand karma, cause and effect, that a lot of time to get to that bigger boat, to get to the bigger car, we're creating tremendous karma. And karma is a boomerang. It always comes back. Whatever we're experiencing right now are the things we've laid into the ground that are ripening right now for us. That's karma, cause and effect. It is an infallible law. It's not a thing against anyone. It is a thing that we put, and when these conditions, when that seed meets secondary karmic conditions, like the seed meets sun and rain, and the person who puts the seed into the ground, then it blossoms. And so everything that we experience is a blossoming of karmic seed. That's what karma is. That's what samsara is, the perpetual wheel. But because we recognize the preciousness of human existence, because we recognize impermanence, suffering and karma. We can turn from that and start to spend a lot more time developing our basic nature. We start to take care of that seed, the stainless seed of uh, the intrinsic seed of the stainless awareness, which has to do with compassion, which is free from defect, which has nothing to do with the afflictive conceptual mind of the ego. And we start to cultivate that. We let the fluff settle, or we start to experience it in meditation, and then later we can take that experience and use it while we are addressing others, while we're listening to our children talk. We let that space enter into our daily life. We're not forcing everything through this tiny little narrow passage of the me and mine. And the world changes very much for us. Uh, it should, because we have that seed. We have the precious body nature. And we have the limitless potential that can blossom into Buddhahood. It can change our lives so enormously. And it changes the lives of everyone else around us. And that's always our aspiration. We wish to attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentience, so that we may benefit all sentient beings. And that is actually the ripening of the lotus, of the seed, of the flower of the intrinsic nature of awareness. Uh, we should think, we should use the four thoughts that turn the mind to filter every single situation which we encounter in the world. Everything we do, everything we say, everything we engage, we should always filter through impermanence. Do I have time for this? Suffering and samsara. Should I be acting wrongfully? Because the effects of this are going to be such and such and such. And am I actually allowing the situation to blossom through my precious human existence? Because remember, ego is like another limb. I mean, the ego mind, the conceptual mind, it's something that allows us to feel, to have sensation, and it's something that was really probably evolutionary thing that allows us to protect ourselves, to see less. Michael, this morning we were on a walk, and Michael said, if we could hear the sun, if our auditory sensory apparatus was capable or evolved to hear how the sun explodes every millions of times a day when it erupts, we would be shattered. I mean, if we could hear stars collapse in the universe, we would be shattered. If we could feel the speed with which we're hurling through the universe, we would be shattered. So remember, that little mind that allows us to cross the street on a green light, not get hit by a car, it's just a little fraction of us. It is not the totality of us. But through time, because there's so much that's tied into that conceptual mind, namely our afflictive emotions, and we would like to say that these afflictions are not with us. We are not the ones who are causing and creating this negativity into the world. We have trained ourselves to think that all the negative things are out there. The world is bad, the guy is bad, my neighbor is bad, my child is difficult, my mother is difficult. We don't want to take ownership. We don't want to say that we are the dance together. We are the second part. So if we take away our hand, that negative relationship falls apart. It's like taking away half of the building. The building collapses. But because we're so stuck on having these negative relationships, we are so used to living in this disguise that we don't own these negative patterns. We don't own the negative karmic patterns of body, speech, and mind. We live with the ego because it allows us deceitfully to think that we are not the creators of negativity, but in fact we are. And so when the mind starts to turn and has the first inkling that we can change all that, thank God there's impermanence. Impermanence is not about wrinkles and that our body is decaying and will die. That is just an obvious thing, because that happens from the moment we're born. But the impermanence is beautiful because that means that we can change. We can go from being this ego constricted little monster who's trying always to fit in the infinity of natural awareness into this little shell of the ego, and so much pain arises. That we can turn away from that and we can start to live a compassionate life, and we can start to have ownership of our body, speech, and mind. We don't have to blame anyone for what we do. And if we see negative things that are happening, we watch things with compassion, because we are always understanding out of our nature of the mind, out of the basic goodness. We understand that things, because they're impermanent, they're evolving. And so if we watch someone who's cruel and is incorrect right now, we know that because of impermanence, change is possible, and they will evolve. They too have the Buddha seed. They too have the Buddha nature. They will progress. We may not see it in this lifetime, but we carry that awareness with us with great certainty. And we have that certainty for ourselves and every sentient being. So we suspend the judgment, we relax our projection, and we live, we try to bring the limitless nature of mind, the basic mind, to the surface, and dismantle living merely through the ego. We own activity, we transform ourselves. We have the power to transform, but we have to embrace the four thoughts that turn the mind first. And then, because no Buddhist path, when I say Buddhist, I really mean just like a path to sanity and knowing and to gaining the wisdom mind back. No path can start without understanding these things and turning away from samsara and making a 180 turn toward inside. Because after all, practice, summarized in one sentence, it's mind watching itself. It's mind aware of what it does, karma, of its actions of body, speech, and mind. And it's mind aware of its intention. Am I doing this because I want to benefit, or am I doing it because I just feel like this and I'll let my cruelty go unnoticed? So the four thoughts that turn the mind is something that wakes a person up from the slumber of ordinary mind. When we say ordinary mind in Buddhism, we mean deluded, dualistic ego mind that thinks everything is for me, it's all about me, I can do whatever I want as long as it serves me. We wake up from that ignorance, and the four thoughts are like the four hands that go, okay, wake up now, it's time. And so these four thoughts are said to be the door that opens, which we open before we verge onto the path. And it's a very practical tool. If we filter everything we do, we say, we think through these four thoughts, many things will fall by the side. We will not be wasting as much time, and our mind will be engaged in the proper way, exercising our precious human existence. I hope this helps.
Right. Thank you very much. That was wonderful. We'll go to questions. If you have any, use the Q&A function on the computer. How to keep the calmness we achieve during meditation for the rest of the day. When I meditate, I feel calm and relaxed, but during the day, when I face everyday stress in real life, I can't get that calmness and mental clarity back. I seem to let my negative thoughts get the best of me. First of all, the fact that you're even asking this question is very good and shows, a certain resolve and a certain attempt, to really practice. Remember, we're not just sitting in meditation for calmness. That's not really the goal, right? The goal really is to touch the nature of our mind, to see what our mind is doing, to see how thoughts arise in relation to the ego mind, and to see how you can separate the nature of mind from those thoughts that arise and not have to be engaged in them, not have to follow them and things like that. So rather than let calmness be your barometer, just maybe for now, during the day when you face everyday stress in real life, instead of looking for calmness, recognize how this stress and how the problems are arising in your mind. Why is it causing you stress? What is causing you stress? How can you have a distance between the stimulus, the input that's causing you stress, and your reaction to it, rather than just calmness and clarity? I'm not saying calmness and clarity are bad, you know, that's a good place to start from. But you know, you have to work with the thoughts so the negative thoughts don't get the best of you, as you say. So it's as if mind looking at mind in the midst of life. You know, we're bringing this awareness that we're working with and that's arising in meditation on the cushion. We're bringing that awareness into our life. So when we're confronted with an energy that's challenging or negative, either from someone else or from ourselves, when we feel greedy, graspy, when we feel competitive or aggressive, we can turn our awareness in again and just see what's going on. Maybe we could see that this person really is suffering because they're, you know, they have a certain suffering, misery that they're carrying in their life that they're putting onto people, that you can, when you get a sense of it, it might be easier to work with. There may be a different approach you take rather than just opposition or submission or something like that. So I think maybe start to think of, not let calmness be necessarily the barometer of whether you're achieving meditation or not. I don't know if that's helpful. And Victoria, if you want to add anything to that, please do.
It seems to me that what you are describing as calmness is actually you starting to experience your basic nature, the nature of mind. Because when the fluff falls away, when all the conceptual dust settles, we start to experience the base, the limitless. And a lot of times we experience it as something blissful, as luminous, or as peaceful. So what happens is that when we finish meditation, we kind of say that only belongs to that moment. Now, when I'm going to get up, I'm going to fall right back into all of my habitual patterns. But the thing here to do is that while you're in meditation experiencing, you need to identify some. I mean, we always talk about not band-aiding and identifying, but you have to know that this piece is experience of the part of you that is the base part of you. And when you come out and you get off the cushion and you come into the world, do not forget to connect that. It's like the ocean and the waves. It's our habit that propels us to just be the waves, the fluff, just the surface. Don't forget to connect to this experience. Know it to be your nature. Have confidence that that is the nature. And from that space, take a breath, stand back before you speak, before you do, even before you think. Stand back and connect to that vastness. Stand back and connect to that peace. And speak and do and think out of that space. Remember it. That's the view. The view is brought into life experientially through memory. You remember it. You remember it. You remember it. Just like we get triggered by ordinary afflictive emotions, we see someone and right away we're already on fire because we hate that person. That's just like a memory, a trigger. And we need to do the same thing with the nature of mind experience. So as we're experiencing the nature of mind in a formal meditation time, we must bring that off of the cushion. That's why we get on the cushion, so we can bring that with us into everything. It's almost being in the world in this deeper and a more surfacey way, and having your mind see both levels, but always acting, speaking, and doing out of the connecting to the base mind and not being triggered by fluff.
And remember, this takes time. You know what I mean?
Yes.
When you are If you're learning a musical instrument, you learn do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. You learn the scales. You're not gonna the next week play, Beethoven symphony. It's a progressive path. It takes practice. It's something that's going to evolve as you go, and you have to be patient, and you have to, start somewhere and continue. Um, Remember that. Be patient with yourself. Be diligent. Persevere. If you wanted to run a marathon, you can't, and have never run in your life with any distance. You're not going to go run 26 miles your first day. You're going to run a quarter mile maybe, and then it's going to, it's mind training. So be patient.
But you already have experiences, and you have to have confidence in those experiences. And then when you get off the cushion and in real life, draw on that confidence of that experience, recall that experience before you do other things.
Do you know of any teachers online that you recommend? We constantly post book lists. On my Instagram, especially in my stories, I'm always posting teachers. Nick, where do they find the names of the teachers we recommend? Nick, just let me know where, and I'll give you that.
There are many amazing teachers.
Yeah, we have a list of them, so you have to just go online and you'll find it. Nick will post that for us. Suffering is part of the practice of Buddhism. Do we ever reach a time of no suffering? I'm not. Suffering is not part of the practice of Buddhism. Suffering is the reason why we practice Buddhism. So you have to remember. You have to first of all remember that suffering is what is pervasive in samsara and why we practice. Do we ever reach a time of no suffering? That's called enlightenment, and that's what a Buddha reaches. But between suffering and the time of no suffering is the practice. And the practice gives us a way and a method of dealing with suffering, so it's not something we're completely overwhelmed by and continuously under the yoke of all the time. Will our practice in this life follow us into the next? Yes, because what continues from lifetime to lifetime is our consciousness, is our mind. Not our ego, not our identity, not our soul. That's a Buddhist point of view. Our mind stream, our consciousness follows. So we practice on our mind. We're working with our mind. That mind stream is going to follow us into the next. Is there a part of who we were in past lives that consistently stays with us in all future lives? Again, that's the mind stream. That's the nature of mind that is not created, is not destroyed. That's primordial, and that's been, a constant forever,
Well,
prior and past,
and also,
prior and future.
also what follows us from lifetime to lifetime is our karma. So what follows, almost like a scent in an empty bottle, is negative habits and positive habits.
Okay, so Nick's, if you go in the chat function there, Nick posted the link, solidagoproductions.com/project/meditation with Michael Imperioli. www.solidagoproductions.com/projects/meditation with Michael Imperioli. You'll find other teachers there. How important is it to continue our meditation practice during an illness? I've been sick this past week and couldn't focus enough to meditate much. Then I felt unhappy that my illness was preventing me from meditating. Would it be better to just try and persist through the fog and pain of the illness? Yeah, but if your illness is affecting you in a way that's physically not allowing your body to sit in a meditation pose on a cushion in the space, you're bedridden, you're prone, you're laying down, you can work with your mind in that state, in that situation, in that physical capacity. The way we practice, you could look at your mind, you can experience what your mind is going through, working with the thoughts, seeing them dissolve. You can work all those things. And there's also ways of using illness on the path, which I think Victoria can speak to. as well.
It's a very potent means working, doing breath practice Tonglen during illness. The way that you do it is that you, whatever illness you are experiencing for yourself right now, you think of all the beings who are experiencing that illness, and you take the dark and you purify it at your heart chakra and you send the light back to them. You are included in that practice as well, and it's said to have tremendous purifying and curing benefits. And it's very true, because at least your mind becomes very unburdened by it. Also, it's very important to really know on the Buddhist path that illness or obstacle is almost like finding water in the desert. It's something that purifies us. It's something that once we've overcome it, it's left behind us. So instead of think of an illness not as something that's a hinderment. Think of it as something also that in many ways is almost in a way fortuitous, because it is karmic residue from previous lives. And when we get through this illness, and you know you will get through this illness, especially if you're doing Tonglen practice, um, that will be behind you. Those karmic imprints that created that particular situation will be left behind, will be purified.
If we have come to Buddhism late in life, will we still carry any previous bad karma into the next? Well, that depends on many, many factors. That's really something only a Buddha, somebody enlightened, can really see, in terms of what kind of karma you're carrying and stuff. And it's, I think, rather than worrying if you're going to carry bad karma into the next life, you just have to focus on, what karma you have now that you're dealing with and what karma you're creating. And that's it, and that's all you can do. You know what I mean? There's no, to worry that you're not going to eliminate all your bad karma in this life is kind of a waste of energy and thought. I mean, it's a good aspiration to not want to create any more bad karma. And if obstacles arise like an illness, to realize that this is past bad karma coming to a ripening that you can purify by going through the difficulty, by going through the suffering. And when the suffering is gone, that negative karma has been, eradicated, evaporated, gone. So the fact that you came to Buddhism is a big deal. Don't qualify it that you came in late and you wish you came in early. The fact is, you came when you came. If you're into Buddhism now, you're into it, and you have the opportunity to practice, to work with your thoughts, to work on your karma, to create a situation for positive rebirth and create positive karma. The first of the four thoughts is knowing that you have a situation in life where you found the Dharma. There have been times in history and certain other world systems and alternate universes where maybe there is no Dharma, there is no teaching, there is no possibility of getting, the words of the Buddha or the teaching. Or you have the sense faculties and the mind that is capable of hearing the teachings and capable of implementing the teachings. And you live in a part of the world where it's not forbidden and prevented, and you can't, maybe it is, but you're still somehow managing to get access to the teachings, you know what I mean? So the fact that you have that ability now is a very big deal, and you should take advantage of it. How would I be able to clear my karmic debt? That's exactly the same, basically the same answer, is by practice, is really committing to the fact that you have a karmic debt, that you've created bad karma through, maybe in this life, definitely, most definitely in previous lifetimes, for many, 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 many eons probably, and that there's an opportunity to clear that through practice. And that's the good news, the fact that you have come to a point in your life where you're asking that question and you're aware, you're the first noble truth of the Buddha is saying, in samsara, it's suffering is pervasive, right? And a lot of that suffering, we know, comes from our own negative emotions that create this negative karma. You know, the third noble truth is that there is a path that can lead us out of that. That's the good news. And you obviously have stumbled onto that path somehow. So that's something to rejoice about.
And I would only like to add, what's very important is that you have to undertake action which will liberate you and your mind. You have to undertake practices, whether they're tonglen practices or you're meeting in person, person in person together. But the important thing is to watch your mind, to liberate your mind. And wherever you're stuck with negative emotions, with judgments, with hatred, or with dislike, or projections, dissatisfaction, those are the places that all have to be cured. For one, the person has to be made to know that you love them and your desire is to benefit them, and that you have remorse for maybe hurting them in the past because you didn't understand things perfectly. But inside yourself, you have to do the work of where you truly transform the negative into positive behaviors, and you loosen the attachment, because a lot of times we hold to negative emotions, judgments. We hold to the opinion of someone as such and such and such, or I did the right thing and no matter what. So it's very important that we purify the mind stream from these negative tendencies and habitual tendencies.
Do all people face karma? Because oftentimes people I've known who have done bad to others end up having a good life and never get consequences. You have to understand that karma is not just an aspect of this lifetime. You're experiencing all people. It's not that all people face karma. Karma is a pervasive truth of existence, right? Even in science, they say every action has a reaction, cause and effect. It's as simple as that. And remember that circumstances that you are in now, things, causes and conditions that have arisen in this life are not just from this life, prior lifetimes. From a Buddhist point of view, you're dealing with karma that might have been created many lifetimes ago. So someone who does really bad, eventually they're going to have to face that. Eventually those karmic seeds that they're planting through their negative actions will ripen into suffering. Well, it may not be this lifetime. It may be a future lifetime when someone is, I mean, people get very stuck on these things because we like to think of justice and retribution in an immediate sense, and we would easier, for instance, say a child, an innocent child who's very young, gets cancer and suffers and dies. We would prefer to think the universe is a cold, random place that, has no sympathy and bad luck. This kid had bad luck. From a Buddhist perspective, we would have to say that in prior lifetimes, not this lifetime, because this child didn't probably do anything in this lifetime, but there might have been a prior lifetime, well, there most likely has been, probably definitely has been, a prior lifetime when this mind stream was in another body that committed some maybe very negative actions toward others. And now this karmic seed, unfortunately, has ripened in the body of this innocent. That's a Buddhist point of view. People get very stuck on that. But you have to remember having a good life maybe is temporary. And eventually that life is going to end. And if that negative karmic seed is not exhausted, it will ripen in the future. One of the 4 thoughts that we spoke about today that turn the mind to Dharma is to remember that karma is infallible. If we really, really understand that karma is infallible, negative actions will give rise to negative results, we will work very hard on creating the conditions, causing conditions for positive karma.
I would like to add 2 more points to this question. One is we're dealing with the realm of appearances. We may assume that someone whom we deem evil is having a great time, lives in luxury, has no consequences, etc., etc. But we are only dealing with appearances. We really cannot speak to the mental state of someone or their surrounding, or their family, or their everything. We don't know if it's actually not on fire and is burning. And second point I would like to add is that we have to watch our mind. We can only work on ourselves. Are we asking certain questions because it would give us pleasure to see someone suffer? We have to make sure that things come from the right place. Justice is very important, unquestionably. We just have to make sure that it's not intermingled with poisonous, afflictive emotions.
When someone is subjected to abuse, is that because of their past karma? If you're undergoing abuse, that's a form of suffering. So your suffering, without a doubt, has arisen because of karmic seeds planted in the past. However, remember, if you are being abused, just saying, well, I'm going to let this person abuse me because obviously that's my karma, that's not, we're not saying that that's a proper response to it. You may very well need to confront the abuser, to stop the abuse, to speak up about abuse. It's not about just being, and I say this a million times, being a Buddhist is not about being a doormat. Karma's also not fate. Do you know what I mean? It's not your fate is to be abused. We don't know how these negative karmic seeds are going to arise and ripen. But when they do and we suffer, we can know that we are, reaping the cause of some past negative actions, and we have the ability here to exhaust it or purify it. But if you're being abused, by allowing someone to abuse you, you're allowing them to create negative karma also. So we have to keep that in mind. It's not about just allowing, it's not surrendering to the abuse because you figured that's the bad karma. But if you are experiencing it, part of you should have that mindset saying, okay, the suffering, when I do suffer, when I'm going through difficulties, I am exhausting this bad karma. But I'm going to deal with it as sanely, as sober-mindedly, and as clear and compassionately as I can in the present. Okay. Any more questions? We should close this class. I want to thank Victoria for her very clear and illuminating talk on the four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma. I want to thank Nick Solidio, our producer, for his generosity and kindness. Without, we would not be able to do this class.
And thank all of you.
Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
We close by dedicating the merit generated from today's class for the benefit of all beings. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. See you next